Okay, we're streaming on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
And okay.
So it's live on YouTube right now.
Okay, cool. Kat, will you monitor any questions that come up, or because I won't be able to see them while I'm?
Yeah, that's cool. We'll keep an eye on that.
Again, that's
Great. And then when this is done, we'll make sure you get a link, and we'll just edit out this little bit that we've got going on right now.
That's fine. That's okay. That's all right. Shall I just start?
When you're ready.
When you're ready, let's go.
Okay, cool. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to everyone who is listening. Welcome back to another episode of Decoding Illness and Disease. If you're new to this presentation, this is my third presentation on how to decode illness and disease. And today we are going to be looking at how to solve anxiety. But before we do that, I want to issue a warning to everybody. I issue this warning at the beginning of every one of my sessions. Everything I'm going to say is going to be the exact opposite of what you have been told. But you need to know that, because most people that I see, they've been told a load of nonsense, and they've been told things that don't get them better. It just maintains or copes with their symptoms. It's not actually solving the problem. And I'm about solving the problem. I'm about getting rid of the problem. I don't like maintaining things or controlling things. It's very draining. It's very tiring. And it's not the way people are meant to live their lives. We're supposed to be free, happy, healthy people. We shouldn't have illness and disease. It should be a thing of the past by now, but it's not, because we're not focusing on the actual root cause of illness and disease. So everything I'm about to say will be the exact opposite. But if you are ill, or if there's something wrong, and what you've tried so far hasn't worked, then you might want to pay attention to this, because this will give you the answer. Or at least point you in the right direction. But today we are going to focus on something very specific. But before I do that, I'll just run through a little bit about me. I do this every time, but so if you've all heard this, I apologize. I've been a therapist for over 20 years now. My name is Jonathan Shaw, obviously. I'm qualified in EFT, theta healing, matrix reimprinting, meta health, advanced clearing energetics. And I am the creator of the DTO system, which is a very simple but powerful way to literally switch off negative thoughts and feelings, just like switching off the lights. So the DTO system is capable of not just switching off thoughts and feelings, but it switches off negative memories and traumas. It switches off triggers. It can switch off images and sounds. Anything that is negative in your system, the DTO system can switch off. Just like you're flipping off the lights, just if you're switching off the light, it does it almost that quickly in a lot of cases. Sounds impossible, but I've been using it for 7 years now. It's very accurate, and it works really, really well. And it helped me switch my depression off. I suffered with depression for ever since I was a teenager, and I'm now in my 40s, and I haven't had depression for over 5 years now, since I finally switched it off with the DTO system. And I tried everything. I tried counseling, I tried tapping, I tried theta, pretty much everything that I've studied, that I'm qualified in. I tried all those things, and it had mixed results. But once I found the DTO system, it answered a lot of questions for me that previously I couldn't answer with other things. And it allowed me to finally solve the root cause of my depression. But today, we are going to be focusing on anxiety. Now, I have experienced anxiety myself briefly for about 3 months, but other than that, I've never really had long-term anxiety. But I'm going to show you how to fix anxiety, even if nothing else has worked. So it doesn't matter what sort of anxiety you have as well. There's lots of different labels for anxiety: social anxiety, health anxiety, relationship anxiety, phobias. They're all types of anxiety. It makes no difference which one you're suffering with, or if you're suffering with multiple of them. The past 10 years, I've been working with anxiety, and this understanding I'm about to give you today will solve all of those anxieties. The problem with a lot of people who come to me when they're suffering anxiety, they're focusing on the wrong problem, or they're trying things that aren't really going to solve it for them, as I said earlier on. So they're just maintaining and controlling it. But I want you to get rid of it. I don't want anyone to have anxiety. You should be able to walk out and be free and happy and live your life. You shouldn't be feeling anxious. And some of my clients, they think it's normal to be anxious, and in reality, it's more common these days. There's a lot more people who are anxious, but that doesn't make it normal. It is not right. We shouldn't be anxious. We shouldn't be a society who are crippled with anxiety. But the sad truth is a lot of people are today. And in the most part, once you understand what's actually causing your anxiety, you can then set about switching it off and changing it. And for the most part, most people don't take very long to switch their anxiety off. There are a couple of people, you know, a few 5% of people who are a little bit more complicated, but the majority of people, I should say, good 70-80% of people with anxiety, you can resolve it fairly quickly within a few weeks or a few months, so it doesn't come back again. And then that saves you with, you know, having medication. It saves you, you know, changing your diet or eating correctly. Not there's anything wrong with that, but it often doesn't solve the anxiety completely. So now, if you've all seen the other presentations, I walk people through this process. This is the process that I've been teaching for the past couple of sessions, and I've been teaching it as the understanding of the basic process to understand how illness and disease work. So if you haven't seen this, please go back and watch the previous videos about this, because this process is very, very important. And once we can understand this process, we can start working out how illness and disease actually works. And this is a really great way to understand. So I'm just going to recap. So all illness and disease start from a Udin moment, which is something unexpected, dramatic, isolating with no coping strategy. It's like a shock or a trauma from the past, but it doesn't have to be a trauma. It can just be a negative memory or a negative set of memories, but it can be traumatic. So it can be something as simple as, you know, always being put down by your parents in lots of small ways, or it can be something as severe as abuse or rape. It doesn't matter. It's something unexpected, dramatic, isolating with no coping strategy. And then at that point, once you have that moment, you move into the stress box, the blue cloud, which is your sympathetic nervous system. And then you move into the repair phase, which is the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the red cloud. And then at some point, you should come out the other side and feel healthy and happy. But most people's symptoms are in one of these two clouds. So most people's, well, every symptom, in fact, every symptom that a person can experience falls into one of these two boxes, the stress or the repair phase. Now, anxiety, whichever anxiety is, doesn't matter. Anxiety falls into the stress state. So when you are anxious, you are in a stress state. And the stress state is purely your fight and flight state. It's purely fight, flight, and freeze. And that's how all illnesses start. They all start with the Udin moment, and that puts us into a fight, flight, or freeze state. That's it, pure and simple. I like to keep things as basic as possible. That's all that's happening. People are going to fight and flight every single day, and they don't realize it. And not just with illness and disease, but with relationships, with work, with money, with people. Everyone's going to fight and flight at the moment, and they have been for years. And then what happens is that after fight and flight switches or calms down, then that's when symptoms kick in. Or if you're in a fight and flight state for a long period of time, that's when symptoms kick in. So in this case, in the case of anxiety, that actually happens when you're in fight and flight right then. So that the stress state, when you're feeling anxious, you are right in fight and flight. And it will happen within about 10 minutes of the memory or the trigger being fired off. So let's say it's a memory. If you're thinking about that memory in your mind, it could be from 20 years ago. But if it's still a high fight and flight state, you will feel anxious thinking about it within a few minutes of putting it in your mind. If it's a trigger in your current environment, let's say it's someone, you know, coming after you or feeling attacked by somebody, then you're going to go into feeling anxious literally within about 10 minutes of that happening. So anything you're thinking about or anything that's actually happening, as soon as you start thinking about it, you're going to feel anxious. Or as soon as it happens, you're going to start feeling anxious. And that's really important to remember when you're looking for the root cause, which I'm going to go into. You need to know when it happens so you can find the root cause, because this will really help you nail down what the root cause is. And that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to show you the root cause. And once you understand that and you can see that, once you can see that in your own world and you can see where that's happening, then you can seek out a way to switch it off and change it. Obviously, I can't do that with you today, but I can show you the understanding that I've used for the last 10 years. And it is the same understanding I used to get rid of my acute anxiety that I had a couple of years ago after a relationship broke up. and I was actually sitting in my lounge, and I realised I was getting anxious every time I came into my lounge, and I realised what was happening was I was being triggered in my own living room and feeling anxious. And once I switched that trigger off, the anxiety and a couple of other triggers in outside, the anxiety pretty much, well, it went away very, very quickly. Now, I only had acute anxiety, but it's the same thing. Once you understand what the route is, you can then find the memory or the triggers around that route. And then once you've got a way to switch it off, the anxiety will gradually reduce and reduce and reduce until it goes away completely. So anxiety is in the stress state. Very important to remember that. Now, there are 3 things you need to know to solve your anxiety and feel normal again. And when I say normal again, I say that because a lot of my clients come to me and they tell me they just want to feel normal. They just want to be like everybody else and walk out, wake up, live their life and feel normal, just not have the anxious feeling there at all. So the 3 things are: 1, you need to understand why traditional, alternative and holistic medicine is not working for you. Now, why do you need to understand this? Because if you don't, you're going to keep doing one of these things. There's a lot of people, what they do is they keep repeating the same thing over and over again, hoping that it's going to help, and it never does. So if you understand why it's not going to work for you, that's going to help you stop doing it, because you're going to see, oh, wait, it's not going to work for this reason, so I need to find the answer. So that's very important. Number 2, I'm going to show you the only 2 responses that actually cause anxiety. There are 2 single responses that create anxiety. And once you find those responses, you find the memories where you had those responses, and you find the triggers where you've had those responses, and start changing that, your anxiety will reduce. And it has nothing to do with what traditional medicine say, and I'll cover that later on. And the 3rd one is the responses that sabotage us. Now, I'm not going to get into sabotage today, because sabotage is a completely different subject, and I can do a whole hour on that alone. But that is important with some anxiety. When I said earlier on, there's a 5% of people who are challenging. Those people are the ones who have sabotage running, or what we call secondary gain. And you need to find that before you can start switching the anxiety off. But I'm not going to cover that today, because that would go into a 2-hour session. I'm sure everybody listening to this, although you may be really interested, you also have lives as well. So I'm sure you don't want to sit here for 2 hours. But I will do that, perhaps the sabotage, next time, and show people what's actually stopping them from healing, or what's blocking them in their unconscious. So today we're going to cover why traditional alternative and holistic medicine is not working, and the 2 responses that actually cause anxiety. So why does traditional and holistic medicine not working for you? Well, basically, the way traditional medicine look at it is they're only treating the symptoms, not the cause. So anxiety is, and it describes the symptoms, or it describes the reaction that the person is having. So that when another doctor says it to another doctor or another medical profession, that other doctor knows what they mean. The problem with traditional medicine, and even alternative medicine, because they follow a similar premise, that whatever you go to a therapist with or a doctor, that is apparently your symptom. And then they will diagnose you, if for want of a better word. They're not very good at that, but that's what they'll attempt to do. And they will then say, oh, well, this is the cause. And they'll find something happening inside of you, like your hormones, or your nervous system, or your DNA, or something wrong. And then that they go, oh, well, that's the cause of it. And that is a dreadful way to analyze what's wrong with people. I mean, that is horrible, because it just leaves people stuck. It's a dreadful way of looking at illness and disease. It sucks. And a lot of people have come to me with that analysis or understanding, and they've just got stuck with it because they believe there's nothing can be done. And that's the problem. It leaves you thinking nothing can be done. So what I would encourage you to remember is, no matter what label you've been given, it doesn't matter whether it's anxiety or depression or sciatic pain or gallbladder problems or liver problems or IBS, it doesn't matter what the label is. That label is not a cause. It's just a label to explain what they believe is happening in their body. That's it. And when I solve someone's problems, I kind of flip it, because, like I said, if you go to the doctor with a symptom, so let's say you're getting anxiety, most people say that's the symptom. You're getting anxious, nervous, fearful. Those are symptoms. And then the doctor looks at you and goes, oh, you've got this, and that's the cause. Well, actually, that's not the way to look at it. What you want to do is you want to say, right, what the symptoms you're getting, they're not symptoms, they're a reaction. So your nervousness, your anxious feeling, your fear, that's a reaction. Then you look inside the body and go, what's happening? And whatever's happening inside the body, that's a symptom. And then you go, well, what caused the symptom? And what caused a symptom is a Udin moment, a trigger that puts you into fight and flight. And once you're in fight and flight, you end up getting stuck there. So your symptom is not a symptom, it's a reaction. The cause that a traditional medicine says causes not, that's the symptom. And what causes that is Udin moment, whatever's putting you into fight and flight. And there are multiple fight and flight scenarios. There's multiple things that put people into fight and flight that affect different organs in the body. I'm not going to go into the organ reaction of the anxiety because you don't really need to know that. That's not going to help you. You just need to know the two biological responses that put you into fight and flight. That's all you need to know. And that's what you need to focus on to start solving it. So today I'm going to not just give you the responses, but I'm going to give you a few set of steps to do to go away and find out your own memories and your own triggers around those two causes. So you can start to see the pattern. You can start to see yourself. Oh my God, that's what it is. Oh my God, he's right. I'm feeling this. Oh, wow. And once you can start seeing it, it will resonate with you. And once it resonates with you, then you can set about finding a therapist, or you can reach out to me who can help you change that and switch it off. So the first thing, the reason they can't help is they're not treating the root cause, they're just treating symptoms. The second thing is they tell you can't do it. They tell you it's impossible. You can't change it. I've actually treated counsellors. I actually had one woman, she was trained to be a counsellor, and during her training, she got anxiety. She went to her handler, if you like, that's probably the wrong word, but she went to her coach or wherever it was, her counselling coach, and her counselling coach said, oh, you just have to live with it. She was devastated. She was going there to learn how to help people, not how to keep people stuck. It was a ridiculous thing to say. So she got recommended to me, and she'd only had it for about a month and a half, and she came to me and we got rid of it in 3 or 4 weeks, and she's fine now. She's absolutely fine. But that is what they tell you. They tell you that it can't be solved, that you can't do it. You have to live with it. And that's absolutely not true. Complete load of rubbish. And if you really want to solve it, it can be solved. You can switch it off, and it can be done. And the third reason is they make us believe there's something wrong with us. So they make out that that there's something wrong with us. Our brain's defaulty, or we're just weak, or we're just that sort of personality, or it's coming from your past. It's in your DNA, it's inherited, or it's just something in your brain. Complete load of nonsense, complete load of twaddle. It's just an excuse to keep you stuck. It's not real. And just don't listen to that, because when people listen to that, they give up. They give up hope, and they stop searching for answers. And that's one of the worst things you can do with people is make them lose hope. When people ask me what I do for a living, I often say to them, I give people hope, because most people get to me and they've struggled, they've tried what they think is everything and got nowhere. And they're very skeptical by the time they get to me, and rightly so. That's I totally understand that. But in reality, 90% of people that I treat resolve their problem relatively quickly, and they feel better and they start living their lives again. And anxiety is no different. The worst type of anxiety you can have is actually health anxiety, not because it's the worst one, but because the triggers of health anxiety are with you all the time, because they're actually your body. And the health anxiety I've worked with is the person's own body that's triggering them. And so that takes a little bit longer to switch off, because the triggers are always with you. With most other anxieties, they're not always with you. So, if it's work anxiety, you're only going to get triggered in work, perhaps, or maybe if you do a little bit of work at home, or if you speak to your boss on the phone. If it's social anxiety, you're going to only get triggered in social environments, but when you're at home, you're going to be okay. So health anxiety can be the worst one, because it goes everywhere with you, because the triggers are in your body. And of course, if you have multiple anxieties, that's obviously a little bit more complicated as well, because you've got a lot more triggers and you've got a lot more memories and shocks that have gone with that. But that's the basic reasons that traditional medicine are not going to be able to help you. So just bear that in mind. If you really want to resolve it, traditional holistic medicine ain't really going to touch it. What have I done here? I don't know what that is. I've come off it. So the traditional model of anxiety. Now, traditionally, the traditional model of anxiety is that it's caused by a few different things. And we just wanted to dispel that today. There's a few common things that they say that it's caused by. The first one is, the first one is medical conditions. So they believe that medical conditions, if you have a medical condition, that can create anxiety in someone. And it can do, but not from the perspective that they think. Once I explain the two reasons that cause anxiety, you'll see why a medical condition can cause anxiety. But it has nothing to do with the medical condition. Nothing at all. The actual whatever you have is not the cause of your anxiety. It's triggering the anxiety because of what the cause is. But once I explain what the two causes are, you'll see how that works, and I'll come back to that and show you. Other mental health issues. So again, if you have depression, it doesn't necessarily follow you're going to have anxiety, and vice versa. Some people do, some people don't, but there's a reason for that. And again, once I explain the root cause, you'll understand why, and I'll explain again why that is. Trauma. They're actually right about this one. Trauma can create anxiety, but not all trauma. This is where they go wrong. This is what they don't understand, because one person can have trauma and not have anxiety. Another person can have trauma and won't have anxiety. One person can have no trauma but still have anxiety, and another person can have no trauma and have no anxiety. So they don't understand why that is. And when I explain to you in a minute what the two causes are, because there are only two causes of anxiety, if you don't perceive the world through these two filters, then you're not going to get anxiety, whether you've had trauma or not. If the trauma you've had doesn't run through the filter of the two causes, you're not going to feel anxious. It might make you feel something else, but you're not going to feel anxious. So again, that's where they don't really understand it. Personality types. Okay, so this is just ridiculous. So personality types, yes, while there's lots of things that model personality types, and you can say, oh, well, some people are just prone to it. No. Personality types are driven by behavior. I'm not saying that we don't all intrinsically have some type of trait in us, but to use that as an excuse to why you can't get rid of your anxiety, that is mental behavior. And all that does is keep people stuck, to be honest. And just because you have a personality type, that personality type was probably instilled in you as a child. If your parents were nervous people, or your mum was a nervous person, you are going to be a nervous person. But it's not who you are. You've been programmed with that by watching your mum. It's not who you are. It's not your personality. It's just a habit you picked up. It's a behavior you picked up from your mum or your parents as children, as you as a child. So a lot of personality types come from someone you've watched as you've grown up. And certainly the personality types do not create anxiety. I do not believe whoever put us on this earth, whoever it was, whatever you believe in, God, Allah, Buddha, whatever you want, or whatever it is, whatever creates us, we're actually really amazing individuals. We're really incredible beings. And I don't believe whoever put us here would say, oh, we know what will make this person that way and that person that way, and this person will have anxiety, but that person won't. That's just insane behavior. That's not the way the world's meant to work. We are not meant to be ill and diseased. It's not the way it works. We've just been taught that we are. We've been told it's normal, it's part of life, and it is not normal in any way, shape, or form. It's just become I was going to say popular. It's not popular, is it? It's just become the norm. It's just become what everyone suffers. Everyone suffers with something. Oh, you're getting old. Everyone gets old. They're going to get ill. That's a load of twaddle. It's all there designed to keep you stuck and ill and in fear, basically. It's all in fear. Drugs or alcohol abuse. Now, again, it's not really true, because you can show you someone who takes drugs and alcohol and they don't get anxious. They're okay on it. And it's not the drug or the alcohol that causes the anxiety. So if you are on drugs or alcohol, it's not the cause of the anxiety. Often it's the feeling anxious that might lead the person to drugs or alcohol, or it's your response about the drugs and alcohol that makes you anxious. And you'll understand that once I again describe the two causes. And general stress. Well, again, no, general stress won't cause you to be anxious. It's two very specific responses, which we're going to get to, as I say. And these two responses are the root cause of your anxiety. It's not general stress by any stretch of the imagination. And the problem with understanding it as general stress, you're never going to find it if you think it's general stress. You're going to be like, oh my God, I don't know what's causing it. What could be? And that makes you more anxious. It's very, very specific. And once I point it out, it'll be very simple for you to find. Okay, so if you look at anxiety like that, with any of those understandings, you're going to get stuck, lost, and confused, trying to understand it, or worse, resigning yourself that you have to live with it, which is just not true. You do not have to live with anxiety. I really want to emphasize that as much as possible. In my 15 years of working with anxiety, I have learned that none of those are true. And there are only 2 responses that cause anxiety. So that's what we're going to get to now, the 2 responses that cause anxiety. But just before we do, if there's any questions, Kat, are any questions so far, or is everybody up to speed with what I'm talking about?
We're all good so far.
Fantastic, brilliant. So the 2 causes of anxiety are very, very simple. There are only 2 responses you need to look for to solve your anxiety. Really, really basic. And the 2 responses are feeling attacked or feeling powerless. That's it. Feeling attacked, feeling powerless, or both. So you can have both running, and a lot of people with anxiety do, especially if you have multiple anxieties. So that's as simple as that. So I'm going to give you some examples. Let's look at feeling attacked first. So feeling attacked, you might, it doesn't mean a real attack, although it could have been a real attack. So yes, if you have actually been attacked by someone, raped, abused, beaten up, held at gunpoint, whatever it might be, then you could get anxious because you feel attacked from that memory. And that memory might still be playing, and you could still be in fight and flight about that memory. But it doesn't have to be a real attack. It can be a perceived attack. And most people with anxiety is a perceived attack. Most people I've worked with, they haven't got anxiety because they've been attacked. It's just they've perceived themselves being attacked. It is totally perceived. It's not real. And the way I describe this is it's like a filter that's gone in front of your eyes. So for everyone out there who's been to the opticians, I'm sure that's everybody, you'll know that when they put those glasses on you, they put the red and green lenses on you. That red and green, that's a filter going in front of your eyes, and it changes the way you see the words on the screen. Well, that's the same thing happens when you feel attacked. When you feel attacked, it's like a filter goes in front of your eyes, and you now see the world through that feeling of being attacked. And that is what creates anxiety. So you're totally in a state of fight and flight. You're getting ready to be attacked or ready to run away, and you're constantly on edge, thinking you're going to be attacked. Although you may not be saying that to yourself in your head, that is the feeling you're going to get. You could be attacking yourself with your negative thoughts. That is something that a lot of people have, especially if they have depression with it. So if you have depression with anxiety, you'll often find yourself having negative self-talk, and that in itself can make you feel like you're being attacked because you're attacking yourself. It could be someone simple as criticizing you, or being on your case all the time, or being needy or clingy. So, if a partner in your environment is constantly putting you down, or a boss at work is constantly putting you down, then you can feel attacked. A lot of people in the world today feel attacked for different reasons. The people out there who are wearing masks feel attacked because they think a virus is going to get them. And the people out there who aren't wearing a mask are sometimes feeling attacked because the people who are wearing a mask have a go at them. So they feel attacked. So it's a bit of a nonsense at the moment, unfortunately. That's why there's a lot more anxiety out there at the moment. So it's very relevant for what's going on in life at the moment, which is why I am focusing on anxiety, because there's more of it, because everyone's feeling attacked, basically because the government are just instilling fear in everybody and making them feel like they're being attacked by the government, or they could get attacked by the government if they don't do what they're told. Again, load of nonsense, but it does instill a lot of anxiety around people. There's anxiety around, losing your job or not having enough money at the moment. That might not be an attack feeling. That might be the powerless feeling, like you can't do anything about it. But we'll get to that in a second. And it could be because someone is wanting your attention all the time, so they're attacking your time. It could be something simple like that, something really subtle, like it's an attack on your time, or it's an attack on who you are as a person, or it's an attack on someone around you. You might feel attacked because someone's attacking a friend of yours. It could be that subtle. It could be your energy being attacked. If you're a very spiritual person, you could feel like your energy is under attack, like your energy is being drained. So there's lots of scenarios in which you could feel attacked. And it's not always obvious, but I will show you how to get to it in a second, how to find it yourself with the right questions. Because with this, the trick to this is just knowing the right questions to ask. And I'll explain that in a second. So that's how you may feel attacked. And please remember, 90% of the time, no, actually 98% of the time, it is a perceived attack. It's not a real attack, but it can be. So now feeling powerless. So another way of saying this is feeling out of control or helpless. So not everyone uses the powerless term. They often say, I feel so out of control, I feel helpless. And again, that's happening a lot in the world today with everything that's going on. People are feeling helpless and out of control. And so that's very common. It's another reason why more people are getting anxiety these days. It doesn't have to be that way. So although because of current times, that's why people are getting anxious, you don't have to feel like that in the current times. You are just being put in fight and flight because of things you're hearing on TV, things you're seeing. These are triggers. We would call these triggers. And it's putting you into fight and flight. But you don't have to be that way. You don't have to be triggered into that. I actually don't watch the news, but I do see things in other channels. I'm no longer going to fight and flight over it. So I switched it all off. So that stopped, because I was to begin with at the beginning of the year, not the beginning of the year, but towards the end of last year. I was getting quite angry about it because I actually know how viruses work, and it's not what people's being told. For those listening, you actually can't catch a virus. I know that's new information for you, but I swear on my life, you actually can't. But what's happening is you don't have to feel that way. It is just a perception, and you're going to fight and flight. And if you can find it and switch it off, no matter what's going on, you should be okay. It's a bit like that old Hobnob advert. If you're in England, there used to be a Hobnob advert that says if you can keep calm while everything else is going on around you, and you had this picture of this woman eating a hobnob, staying really calm. It's that exact thing. It's a really good depiction of that. You should be able to stay nice and calm, even if other people are tearing their hair out around you, because going to fight and flight is not going to help you. I've had this conversation with many people. One of my friends, she works with people and she teaches them and trains them in dangerous situations to not go into fight and flight. So, you know, people in the army, people who go to war, they're trained not to go into fight and flight, because you can't go into fight and flight if you're fighting a war. You shouldn't be in that state. You should be nice and calm, nice and chilled, and be able to do your job. So people like that, they're trained to not go into fight and flight state. And people think that they need to be in fight and flight to solve the problem or deal with the situation. We need to put up a fight. We need to fight this. And that's not true. You don't want to be in a fight and flight state when you're trying to fight something or you're trying to stand up for yourself. You want to be nice and calm and chilled. So any fight and flight state you're in is not good. And I'll tell you how to understand whether you're in fight and flight in a minute. So feeling powerless, it's another way of saying out of control or helpless. It could be powerless to change a situation or a person. This is what a lot of us try and do. We have a situation in our life, or we have someone in our life that we don't like or isn't acting the way we want them to, and we try and change them. And over the years, I've asked a lot of my clients if this has ever worked, and they've all said no. They've never been able to change a situation or person. The only thing you can change is you. And ironically, when you change you, when you change your reaction to what's going on, the problem that you're facing, the situation or person, they either stop doing it or they go away. It's that simple. When you change your response about it, the situation, the environment clears up really quickly. A really good example of this is a lady I treated, and she had a problem with her brother, and she had a symptom of her bladder used to swell like a tennis ball. And it was her brother basically who was trying to control her. So she did feel a bit powerless, and although that wasn't the main response, the main response was she couldn't control her boundaries. He kept trying to encroach on her boundaries and tell her what to do. And bear in mind, both these people were in their 50s. You know, he was a little bit older than her, but he didn't have any right to tell her what to do. And this issue caused her bladder to swell because she couldn't mark her territory. But once we switched it all off, he actually emailed her and apologized. And she stopped trying to communicate with him because he just wouldn't listen. So for about 3 weeks, during the period she was seeing me, she stopped trying to communicate. And after we started switching things off, he actually apologized out of the blue. He just sent an email and said, I'm sorry. So once you change your response about the situation actually heals. So all the time you're trying to resolve the situation by changing the person or solving a situation in the environment, and it's not working, just change how you feel about it. Find a really good technique that works really well for you, that actually changes your thoughts and feelings. You can't do it logically because, I say, you're going to fight and flight, and fight and flight is a biological response, so it's not logical. So you're not going to be able to do it logically. But there are many great techniques out there to do that. So if you can change how you feel about the situation, then the situation will resolve pretty quickly. Very, very magical. It's an amazing thing to do once you know how to do it. You could feel powerless over your own thoughts and feelings. This is very, very common, especially people who are depressed or they've had something for a long time. They feel, or they're having dark thoughts or something like that. They feel very powerless over their thoughts and feelings, or they're just always negative. They feel powerless to change their thoughts and feelings, and this in itself can create anxiety. You could feel powerless because you can't help someone or you can't save them. This is very, very common, especially amongst therapists. Being a therapist, I know I used to have this myself. Didn't create anxiety. It just used to, frustrate me perhaps. Not so much anymore. I don't try and force myself on people any longer. But you can feel powerless if you want to help someone, and often a family member. I felt this with my dad. Actually, I with all my skills and knowledge, I really want to help my dad, and he just didn't want to listen to me, and that was very frustrating for me. And in the end, I had to let it go because it wasn't helping our relationship and it wasn't helping me. So I actually switched it off in the end because it just once I found this technique that I do, my DTO system, I was able to switch that off. But if you're trying to get someone better, if you desperately want to get better because you love them or you want them to understand or something, stop it. Then it's never going to happen in a million years. The best thing you can do, the best way to resolve it is to change your feelings around it. And you have a much stronger chance of that person changing by doing that. Because when two people come together, you both have an energy around that problem. So whatever the situation is that two people are having or a group of people are having, everyone's got an energy involved. Everyone involved with that problem has an energy involved, including you. If you remove your energy, if you find a way to take your fight and flight state out and remove it, you will often find that the people who were involved with that either disappear, stop reacting that way, or they change in some way. It's much quicker than having to try and change the other person, and a lot less frustrating. But unfortunately, we're not taught that. We're not taught that's the way to do it, so we often don't realise. That's actually something called law of attraction. If you're listening to this, I'm probably sure you've heard of it. You may not have been able to get it to work for you before, but that comes down to just being able to switch off your traumas and your memories and your limiting beliefs, and also get rid of your sabotage, which I'll cover on another video. So ask yourself the question, if you're on this and you're watching it and you're suffering anxiety, ask yourself the question, do you feel attacked or powerless or both? And write it down. So if you feel both, write both. If you feel attacked, write attacked. If you feel powerless, write powerless. And you can narrow it down even further. So just think about your general anxiety and go, well, when I feel anxiety generally, am I attacked or powerless? And then you have your answer. Now, it may be different in different scenarios, but just think of the general scenario to begin with. Do you feel attacked or powerless or both? Because those are the only two responses you need to look for. That's it, nothing else. So the steps you want to follow to get more specific is you want to think of the area where you feel anxious. So let's say, most people with anxiety, they have one or two areas where they feel anxious. There are some people who have lots of areas, but most people feel anxious socially. That's a very common one. A lot of people at the moment feel anxious going out because they're so frightened in case there's some scary virus out there, or they're getting attacked by somebody in a mask, or somebody who thinks they should be wearing a mask, and if they're not. So just think about the scenario. It might be with a partner. It might be with your family members, a mum or dad. It might be with your kids even, where you feel attacked or powerless. Just think of one scenario where you feel anxious, and then go, right, when I think of that, am I feeling attacked or powerless or both? And write it down. And then think of a few other memories and go, am I feeling attacked, powerless or both? And write it down for all these areas of your life where you feel anxious. And you'll start to see that actually you're feeling attacked, powerless or both. Really, really simple. And you might not be powerless. You might say, oh, I'm feeling out of control or helpless. So just be mindful of that. But it will be one of those two responses. as I say, or both. And if you just work through and think about different scenarios, you will start to see the pattern. You'll start to see that actually that is how you're actually feeling. You just might not have known it. So once you now know that, you can start looking at your life and going, oh, I'm feeling that. Okay. All right, I got it now. Okay, that makes sense. So then, so we've covered that, attacked or powerless in area, or it might be both. So we've covered that. And write a list of your memories and traumas. So write a list of them and check where you feel attacked or powerless in any type of situation. That's a great thing to do first. That's your first stepping stone to do that. So there are two things you need to find when you're doing this. I did mention it earlier on, but we'll cover it. So two things you're looking for are memories or traumas and triggers. So when you're checking the attacked and powerless things, you want to look for memories first. So memories or traumas first. These could include actual attacks like rape or abuse. They could be like, being bullied at school, maybe fights, or just being criticized and judged by your friends. Being told off by mum and dad, that can often make us feel attacked or powerless. If we're always told off as a child, or we're always getting into trouble, or always being told we're useless, that can leave us with an attacked feeling. Also, if you witness your mum or your dad be very nervous or anxious, you can learn the behavior. So it can be a learned behavior that you're just playing in your head over and over again. Your rights being taken away, that is prevalent to today. You could feel attacked for that reason. And triggers are more like the look on someone's face. So if someone looking angry makes you feel attacked, then that's a trigger. So the difference is memories are normally things from the past, and traumas, they're things from the past, but triggers, they happen in the moment. So often a trigger was in a memory, but it's being triggered in the environment by someone that you see or interact with, or something you see and interact with on a daily basis. So the most common answer to that is, perhaps if your mum or your dad always give you a certain look, it could trigger you back to when they gave you that look as a child. Or you could be at work and your boss gives you a look, and that reminds you of the way your mum looked when she used to get angry at you as a child. So triggers can be things you see. They can be things that you hear. So finger pointing, someone pointing a finger in your face, that can make you feel attacked or powerless. Body language, seeing someone's aggressive body language, seeing them puff themselves up or seeing them come at you, that can make you feel attacked. Or a tone of voice. Again, this comes back to hearing. This is auditory. So if someone's using an angry tone, this can make you feel attacked or powerless as well. So when you're writing your list, you want to think of memories first. So write down any memories where you felt attacked or powerless in your past, in all areas of life, where it was a child, where it's work, where it's college, where it's friends, where it's relationships. People often feel attacked and powerless in relationships when they get criticized or they get blamed by their partner. That's often when we feel attacked. It's a very common place for us to feel attacked when we're in a relationship. So write down a list of your memories and traumas first, and just run through them and say, right, I felt attacked there, I felt powerless there, I felt both there, and just make a little note. And then triggers are a little hard to find. Some are really obvious, but some are really, really subtle. So if you can spot your triggers, that's great. So when you're out and about, if you feel anxious in the moment, because it's in the blue box, it's in the stress phase, that whatever triggered you happened within about 10 minutes of you feeling anxious. So just stop and go, right, what have I seen? What have I heard that's made me feel attacked or powerless? Because that's all it is. So in the moment when you're feeling anxious, stop and go, right, what have I seen? What have I heard that's making you feel attacked and powerless? So if you've got social anxiety and you're walking through a shopping mall, I know I use American expression and I do use American slang, sorry, a shopping centre for British people. So you go to Lakeside or something. I had one of my clients had this. She'd go to Lakeside and she would hear the hustle and bustle of the crowd. She would see a lot of people sort of crammed into one space. And this would cause her to have some anxiety, just seeing and hearing these things. So once we switched those triggers off, she was able to go back into that environment. And when she saw and heard those things again, it no longer bothered her. It just did not trigger again. Once you switch the trigger off fully, it can't re-trigger you. So you can go back to that environment and it can't re-trigger you, with the exception of things like rape and abuse. If you are being raped and abused, then you really need to get out of that. And then the trauma is going to be switched off. But with normal everyday life things, no, those can be switched off and you can still engage back into life again and not let them bother you. But those are examples of sort of regular everyday triggers. Examples of unusual triggers might be, one of my clients, she was getting anxious and sort of panicky because she had to give presentations at work, and this was a new role for her, which she didn't originally sign up for. And what was happening was she was being triggered when she was being asked questions in the meeting or being asked to speak. It was triggering her back to a time when she was at business school and her tutor, her teacher, would ridicule her and put her down when she would ask a question. And so this made her feel attacked, and it also made her feel powerless. And once we switched that off, she was able to start her new job. She was able to speak and answer questions, and she was absolutely fine. But it triggered it back to the memory. And although her boss or her colleagues weren't doing that in her new job, it just went back, and every time they asked a question, it reminded her of when her ex-tutor at college used to ask the questions. And although they weren't doing the same way and they weren't criticizing or judging in any way, shape or form, it just brought those memories back. So as soon as we switched those memories off, she could no longer get triggered by it, and she's just able to do her job, and she's been absolutely fine ever since, and she feels great. So triggers can be subtle, they can be obvious, but see if you can spot them. See if you can find what triggers you to make you feel attacked and powerless. And it can be on TV as well. It can be something you see on TV. So a lot of TV at the moment is triggering people. It's keeping people in a state of fight and flight. It's almost like a war zone. It's like you're being stuck in a war zone because all you're hearing all day long is this and corona that and coronas and all this death case and oh my goodness me, load of nonsense. But they're just instilling fear in people. And one of my clients, she actually, when she came to me, she had dreadful anxiety and she had it her whole life. But what happened was her dad, when she was a little girl, when she was about 4 or 5, her dad used to make her watch war movies. And she remembers a little girl sitting there and having these bombs and explosions and guns going off on the TV. And she would just remember that. So every time she went to her dad as an adult, she would just get anxious. I mean, even before she got to the house, just walking down the road, she would get severely anxious because all these bombs and explosions and guns would be going off in her head. To someone who's not experienced it or not experienced something like that, it will sound, ridiculous almost. But it happens every day with so many people. And once you understand this, you can start resolving it. But if you've never experienced it, it can be a little bit difficult to get your head around. So again, look for memories / traumas and triggers where you feel attacked and powerless. So are there any questions before we wrap up? It's about 5 minutes to 5, I believe. Kat, have there been any questions, or is everyone understanding it so far?
All good.
All good, fantastic. So if you are suffering from anxiety, the key things to take away, so just sort of wrap up, the key things to take away from this would be that anxiety is just caused by feeling attacked or powerless. And what you need to do, the main things you need to do to resolve it are find the memories and traumas where you feel attacked and powerless, find the triggers where you feel attacked and powerless and make a note. And then you need to reach out and find someone who can help you switch them off. Not talk about it, not counseling, that's not going to work, because remember, you're going to fight and flight state. You can't switch fight and flight off with logic. You can't switch fight and flight off by talking about it. It won't work in a million years. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with counseling or talk therapy. It just doesn't switch off fight and flight. It's never going to happen in a million years, no matter what you try. So you need a technique that can switch it off. There are many, many techniques out there that do it. And there's things like EFT and theta healing and matrix reimprinting, all sorts of techniques. DTO, the system I created, the DTO system, obviously, in my opinion, is a really good system, and it's simple for you to learn as well. When I work with my clients, I teach it to my clients so they can do it on themselves. So they're not reliant on me as a therapist. I don't want people coming to me for years and years with problems. I want it resolved and gone so they can live their life again. but I want them to learn a technique so that if anything ever comes up in the future, because, you know, life happens, things happen. If anything comes up again that puts them back into fight and flight, they have a way to deal with it. They know how to change it themselves, and you can take control back over your lives again. You don't need to be reliant on therapists or worried that you're going to get ill or sick, because you can actually prevent illness and disease from occurring just by understanding that if you're put into fight and flight at any time in your life, then you might want to switch that off, because that can, I say can, doesn't always, but it can cause problems, and often later down the line, you know, often does, when people just don't realize it. So there's once you found out, you know, what the memories are and what the triggers are, then you can start to resolve it. Obviously, if you don't want to do that on your own, if you want some help, you can reach out to me. You can contact me. I have 3 main websites. I have decodingpain.com. That's my original website, because my original specialty was physical pain, musculoskeletal pain, sciatica, back pain. I solve that for people when they've tried other things and it hasn't worked, when you've done the physio and stuff and it's not worked. Then there's the dtosystem.com. That is the system I use now to switch stress off. That is actually the give you some information on the system. And then there's decodingillnessanddisease.com. So that is partly what I'm teaching you here. I set that website up towards the end of last year to teach people this process. They can start to understand it. And there's a handful of videos on there, and I do post these videos on there on the blog as well. But there's a handful of videos on there that walking you through the basic understanding of why we become a disease. But if you want to reach out to me, just reach out to me at jonathan@dtosystem.com. That's my email address. Or go to any of those websites. You can give me a call if they're in the UK, and we can arrange to have a chat. Or if you just want some further advice, or even if you just have a question about what I've spoken about today, I'm happy to answer questions. Obviously, if 5,000 people email me, you may have to wait a little while. I doubt that's going to happen. But anyone can reach out to me and ask me a question. I'm happy to answer questions. Really, I just want to educate people as much as possible to understand why we get sick, the real cause behind it. Because if you've done something and you're better, so if you've done the nutrition and it's worked, that's fantastic. That's brilliant. And it does work, but there's a reason why it works. And I spent a long time understanding why things work and why they don't work. So that when someone comes to me and it hasn't worked, I can explain why, and I can explain what they need to do to get better, rather than just keeping them stuck. So they do work often, and everything does work to a certain degree. It's just understanding why it works, how it works, and then if it's not working, understand why it's not working, so you can either correct it and get it to work, or know what you need to do to actually get better, instead of doing the same thing over and over again. So if you want to reach out to me, by all means. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope everyone learned something. And if you haven't watched live and you're watching the recording, I hope you've learned something new and got something out of that. As I said at the beginning, everything I say is generally the complete opposite of what you've been told. But the only way I can get people better is by getting them to see a different perception, get them to see a different way of looking at it. And once you start looking at it differently, you can then start to solve it. Thank you once again. Have a great week. Hopefully I'll be back with you in a few weeks if they ask me back. And I will continue teaching you decoding illness and disease, so you can understand the real cause of why you're sick and not functioning in life. Have a great week, and I'll speak to you real soon.